Okay, that's good. Um, Today's the 23rd of February, 2021. The winds you see out there are part of a storm that, if you're east of me and I'm on the extreme western edge of the United States, is going to be hitting you over these next few days. And it's a considerable one. We've gotten 1.25 inches of rain in the last day. And it came down in fierce line squalls. Those will stack up on the Rockies and get to be really large. Anyway, the topic today is wooflation, and it's going to come down to three parts. Currency collapse. I use that symbol for all currencies because basically all currencies now relate to the dollar, the USA dollar, other than the exception of the ruble and a few of the smaller independents. Basically, everything is so tied to the dollar that if the dollar collapses, they also will, or they will ahead of it, actually. How it unfolds is in the effects we're going to see because it's happening now. The silver squeeze is merely a symptom and is not really a cause of anything relative to the dollar collapse. It has gotten to the end of its lifespan. In 1910, happy jolly group of clowns got together on an island in the Caribbean, I think it was, and devised a plan that we all have come to know and love as the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, which is not a part of the federal government, has no reserves, and is not a bank. And ever since then, we've been living in this increasingly artificial construct under the control of that happy band of clowns. And so now we are at the end of this particular phase of humanity's life on this planet. It's going to affect everybody because the dollar, as I say, is the underpinning for almost all the currencies in the world, or they're pegged to it so closely that they might as well be. We know it's collapsing now because of what we've seen in Africa, where we've got people that are with a treasury saying, like Nigeria or Nigeria or Kenya was saying that no, we can't have Bitcoin. It's eating our currency's lunch, and it's destroying their federal currency. And so they say this on Friday. By Monday, they've come to realize that all the citizens have said, "Hey, to hell with that worthless currency. We're going with Bitcoin." And so they reversed their stance. And by that Thursday of that week, they are the Treasury and the bank are starting to buy Bitcoin as a reserve for their worthless currency. And so this marks the collapse. We know from history that all fiat currencies collapse eventually. We've known this for 6,000 years, ever since China started messing about with them in serious ways. As they collapse, we have many effects. The collapse is predictable, and you can see early signs of it. So now note that this is actually the collapse of the dollar empire. And unlike the collapse of the Byzantine Empire, it doesn't take the capital of the state being overrun by barbarians in order to bring that collapse down, although we note, ironically, the little mini barbarian insurrection, the thing we had there, right? And it's just typical of the collapse of the empire. I live in a state within these United States, which is a collection of 50 of these sovereign, independent nations that have all banded together and have gotten themselves and the rest of the world really fucked up because of the dollar empire. The dollar empire is not these United States. The dollar empire is dying. These United States are not dying. The dollar empire is dying because it's based on that dollar currency, and because the scheme had a finite lifespan that they've extended beyond its reasonable life, And we're now at this stage of really nasty collapse and the effects that we're seeing. So it will be the death of the dollar empire, not the death of the United States, that will go when the Federal Reserve dollar goes, which is close. No one can say how close. We can't say it's going to be a month. We can't say it's going to be 3 days. But it might be somewhere in between there. It might be just on the other side of a month. But it's very, very, very close. We're seeing the signs of that collapse now. And so we see African nation head of central bank and the head of their treasury get together, make all these pronouncements, try and affect things, and Bitcoin comes along and sweeps them right off the stage of history. And then lo and behold, here today, in the central capital of the dollar empire, which is now headed by these, I'd have to say, communists, really, elite communists or cluster communists, because the communism doesn't extend beyond them. These strange breed of technocrats are running a dollar empire, and in the central corridors of power of that dollar empire, we get exactly the same thing being said today, which is or maybe it was yesterday. I'm uncertain. I'll tell you about it in a second. But today the effects are being felt because der Unterführer Yellen says Bitcoin be bad. Don't mess with Bitcoin. We're going to make Bitcoin currency non grata here in the U.S. And so Bitcoin takes a 17% hit at one point and then starts retracing. Why? For the exact same reason that we had that effect occur in Africa. It's because der Unterführer Yellen is Yellen for all the reasons that because she's afraid, she's expressing panic, because she is as vulnerable as the African nations head of currencies, head of treasury, in exactly the same respective position to Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies, or any solid money. So we get to the point today where Bitcoin takes this hit. It drops down to 47,000 something. And maybe it was lower, I don't know. I don't follow prices. And what is the response? Aha, buy the dip, buy the fucking dip. And people bought the fucking dip, and it starts coming back up. Yellen can't respond continually, or she becomes shrill. The whole mechanism, the whole club sounds shrill. If she becomes shrill, the more she sounds shrill, the weaker the dollar appears. So there's this really interesting dynamic going on right this minute. These dynamics move very rapidly once they unfold. That's why we're talking about how it unfolds. I mean, we're literally talking about a span of 7 to 10 days in which the African nation repudiated their original position and went to adopt Bitcoin, and basically not only repudiated, but adopted the enemy as their only support for their currency. That currency having previously been tied very extensively to what was going on within the US dollar and the yuan, because of the influx of the Chinese into Africa. But hey, good news is the CCP and the Han Chinese, which is a racial subgroup, one of 160, I believe, that are within dominant Chinese sphere there. The Han Chinese are extremely prejudiced. They don't like people in Africa. They're making a really bad name for themselves. So anyway, and the upshot is the Africans, they really like the Hindus because the Hindus are over there too, trying to, provide some level of resistance, some level of sanity against the CCP. And the Indians are doing very, very, very good relative to the emotional reaction of the African people that they get involved with, and the CCP is not. Anyway, though, so the African nation gets its currency all in a wad and all freaked out because of the aspect of Bitcoin, literally munching right through everything. Basically, all the people were taking that currency whenever they could get it and converting it to Bitcoin. They had an easy access method for that. Once the government made that access illegal, all of the citizens just went to neighboring countries to do the exact same thing, basically giving the middle finger to the big government. And this is where we're at right now, here in the United States. So we've already seen the little downward thing from the 17% down on Bitcoin, and it's already turned up as we get into the people realizing, hey, oh my God, here's a dip. And so they're rushing out to buy Bitcoin because they know there's nothing that's changed about Bitcoin other than the mouthings of der Unterführer, Yellen. And you know, she's not a very powerful kind of der Unterführer. She's not very scary. And I don't think that the whole hollow people administration is really scaring much of the people within Wall Street and this kind of thing. Also, to a certain extent, we now have a government of conflicting interests, conflicting special interests. So we note that the hollow people here, so we're going to just say, call it the BA, right? Not for badasses, but for the Biden administration, right? And is it really the Biden-Harris administration? BHA. Isn't that some kind of toxic chemical? Anyway, so this administration has got money from, it's got money from the CCP. It's got money from Wall Street. It's got money from BLM. It's got money from who the fuck knows, other illegal special interests, okay? And so each of these individually think they own the middle, right? So this is another one of those things of hypothecation. Where they've hypothecated ownership of the BHA to these four parties, and if any party tries to withdraw it from the exchange, so to speak, the whole thing busts up. And we're currently in inter-party conflict over ownership. That's visible now. And so we know that der Unterführer Yellen is weak and can't really do anything other than be a mouthpiece for what they want to have happen and try to run these things up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes, which nobody is going to. And as a result, everybody's buying on the dip, and der Unterführer comes out looking weaker than ever. And this is all being driven by, at the moment, by the emotional issues that are going through on silver. So silver is driving the breakup of this entire structure here in ways that we need to appreciate, okay? And that is that the CCP runs all of China's manufacturing. They need silver desperately. The CCP is really pissed because England took all of China's native silver in vast quantities in the Opium Wars. And they sort of are still fighting that particular war. And if you ever see a native Chinese movie, the British are always the bad guys, right? Just like our country, we used to make the Soviets the bad guys. In China, it's always the British. Anyway, though, so they lost all of their silver. They're desperate. They need that silver now for manufacturing in order to keep their own industrial machine growing while they're selling industrial products to the rest of the world, all of which require the silver, which they don't have a whole lot of. They've got a lot of these other rare earth minerals now that they've gone into the Uyghur territory in the northwest, taken up that entire population, seized that entire, effectively, that entire nation, and are strip mining this entire nation to fuel their industrial revolution into them dominating the world. But they don't have silver in quantity. This is what's going to cause Mexico down through the Silver Coast Argentina, Chile. Chile's going to find some off the coast there. Peru, etc., are all going to become a lot more wealthy because they still have extractable silver in some quantity. We're also going to get some off of Greece. There's going to be some underwater silver found out there. Anyway, though, silver is fueling this particular inter-interest battle because it's now making pressure on prices for all of the manufacturing, and it is drying up. It has actually gotten to the point where their manipulation of the silver price has led to a liquidity crises in currencies and a effective realizable crises in both monetary and industrial silver. That is to say, there's none to be had. This will lead in some rapid succession to some temporal markers that we had from the reports. One of them was that the government here in the United States, as well as governments in Europe, would start pressuring coin dealers to sell their silver back into industrial production and monetary production. The monetary production is going to be key. That's going to pop up real quick in another area, but also for industrial production. And the coin dealers and all the bullion people are going to say, we just don't have it. And that's because it will have been stripped out by all of us little guys. Then they will get to the point where they will appeal. They will beg. You will see der Unterführer yelling, get out there and weep and beg and cry and plead. They'll do everything they can to get you to dishoard your silver, to not hodl anymore, to get that silver back into the system. Why? So that they can sell it to the CCP at reduced rates and take the hit on the dollar, because they are bound to the CCP and they must support Chinese manufacturing, which is going to be desperate to get silver. This will occur over like the next 6 to 8 months. It may come out fairly rapidly once it starts moving. So once they start trying to get you to pull the silver out of your stash and sell it into them by offering you more and more and more and more worthless paper dollars, then you'll know as that temporal marker that we're really at that point of the total collapse of the dollar. We will have been watching it unfold, and we're right into the effects of that unfolding. Because the unfolding part here is when we reach that temporal marker, where they're so desperate to actually get metal back into the mining or back into the manufacturing, and the mines are basically running at full-on production and still can't meet the demand. That temporal marker is the point of the dollar collapse, when they start coming in with new schemes. Now, maybe the Great Reset, where we all say, here, you can have all my shit and I'll rent it back from you, and I'll be happy and I'll take your drugs and I won't bother you, elites. Maybe that's offering number one. That's already being rejected pretty much. And we're going to get to the point here too where their next offerings are also probably going to be rejected. But the dollar collapse is going to include, in the unfolding, we're going to see the helicopter money. Helio, and that's sun. Money. Where they're just spewing it out, not just like, one-time stimulus, but rather every damn month, right? And then it'll start getting to be every week. So it's just going to get horrifically bizarre because this is wooflation. It's not hyperinflation, it's not stagflation, it's not deflation, it's not inflation. It's all of that shit all wrapped up together as actual, as all of the citizens, through their collective actions, decide what is going to be the future exchange means among ourselves that we will then build an economy around. So we may find that it's going to include silver, it's going to include gold, it's going to include cryptos, and it's going to include the remnants of the paper currency system, and maybe even wooden money from Tenino. All of these different things will be included in it, and that causes the dollar empire to collapse, because the dollar empire has to have one key thing that the dollar is supreme. So, but basically, fuck white supremacy. I mean, that's like a bullshit idea anyway, right? Or black supremacy or green supremacy. It just doesn't matter. Well, green supremacy is what it was all about. They wanted to have their green, the US dollar, be supreme on the planet, and then the people the clown brigade that met in 1910, their descendants, could rule over us all. And that whole thing is collapsing now because of the distributed and decentralized nature of what's going on with this shift into choose the currency of your choice, which is where we're at now. And so lots of people want to choose silver, only you can't get that stuff. And so that's causing them to want to throw more worthless dollars to try and get some of it. Well, if I give you more of these things, can I get some? Or can I get some quicker? And so that's where we're at now this week. And tomorrow's the 24th. That's where we're going to start this big push on the emotional tension. And I'm all tense now just seeing that Der Unterführer Yellen has been out there running her little spiel and her shtick to try and bring things back to her reality where the dollar empire can keep on going. Because the dollar empire owes a lot of people a whole lot of shit now, right? You know, and the thing is, Trump was not part of the dollar empire. You can give him a lot of shit for a lot of things, but I don't believe he was part of the dollar empire. And I think people, thought he could achieve much more against the deep state than is reasonable to assume anybody could achieve. Anyway, so this is where we're at now. We're still fighting the opium wars. China manufacturing is desperate for silver at the same time that silver is going through this monetary hiccup, and at the same time that we've got all of the people from basically the whole damn population of the world who's pissed off at these clowns from Jekyll Island who started the whole dollar empire off, and they're all watching as the dollar collapses, and they know they've got to do something, and so that's also spurring them on, right? I don't believe Der Unterführer Yellen is going to be able to manage the US dollar, so I don't want to save in the US dollar. I would rather save in toilet paper. After the dollar collapses, people get really irritated by all that by all the using all of the dollars, the currencies they've got, and they would come to me and swap stuff for toilet paper if I had a big supply of it. That actually was, that's kind of a joke, but that's an operating premise of the US Navy logistics chiefs for war. You know, if you don't have enough toilet paper, your war goes to hell. So I've got all kinds of stories about these old Navy chiefs that my dad used to hang out with. Anyway, so we're now in the collapse. The dollar empire is busting up. Our ancillary currencies are all flaking out on us. They're all going to go the way of the African currencies. They're all going to have to be backed by something. Some of them, like Mexico, Peru, et cetera, will start backing their currencies by resources and disconnect from the dollar. That furthers the dollar collapse. Therefore, there's less unification globally around it. And so it is happening now. The process has already begun with the silver thing, the silver stonk going on at the moment. We are there, and we're going to be there on 23rd, 24th, today or tomorrow, and people will start realizing this in a more interesting fashion, because here's what's going to happen. As people understand that Der Unterführer caused that to happen in Bitcoin, and then also, I mean, that's pretty bad. They'll see, uh-oh, hey, look what she can do to cause to the Bitcoin price. But as it rebounds and starts getting up here because people bought on the dip, they're going to equate that to being weak on the part of both the dollar and Der Unterführer. And so here we go. And then they're going to say, well, hey, I don't want to get involved with anything that's weak, so I'm going to get into more Bitcoin, which will drive it back up. And then after it rises up and recovers from the damage caused by Der Unterführer, then even more people will realize how weak she is, and it'll cause more people to want to get into the cryptos. Now, this unfolding process, where they're going to do the helicopter money, where they're going to do all kinds of stuff. They're going to try and preserve the bonds, all right? So that'll be their last line of defense. They'll try and do anything and everything to, hopefully that's decent sound, to preserve the bonds. And if that, or when that fails, that's the end of the dollar. And so basically we've seen that with even the Soviets. When the Soviets' version of collateral for international lending in the form of their sort of colonization bonds collapsed, that was it. Soviet Union broke up like, in the course of 2 months after that. So we'll see that the bonds will be the biggest crisis here. It'll cause a very, very, very nasty global depression, all right? But it need not be very long, and that global depression need not be very deep if we take appropriate action in terms of basically getting information out to people about how to get out of the old mainstream paradigm system that I discussed in the Woonomics video a couple of days back, like a week back, and how to parachute into the Woonomics world of cryptos, silver, and gold. Now it's going to be awful hard to get silver and gold. We're going to have to really start scrounging. Anyway, though, so the unfolding process is here. There's going to be people that make money, make currency, make numbers on their activities over the course of these next few weeks and months. A lot of that numeric value will be nominal because it'll be based in dollars, and they'll think they're doing good. These kind of people need to be clued in. They need to get wise that the dollar indicator in numerics is not necessarily a good metric for long-term wealth preservation or wealth survival. So they're going to have to understand that this whole thing is gone, as is the dollar empire, and the ability for the United States to extend its political will to other countries without the use of military force, merely by dollar shenanigans. Those days are gone, and it's dying. I doubt that China will take its place that way. I seriously do. CCP has got some serious rot internally, and that's another subject for another video further on down the road. Let's quickly get into the effects so that I can get back and do some other stuff. I'm talking very rapidly because I've had a cup of coffee here because I had a hell of a day. 16-hour day yesterday in the damn car. Just brutal. Anyway, though. So, wanted to get all this done here. So, in the effects that we can look at really quick, that will start popping up within days of the big hits to the currency here, we'll start seeing all kinds of things like colleges and universities, anything that's endowed, like museums or preservation societies or conservation societies, anything with a big endowment. These kind of places are just going to start puking all over. They're just going to start, well, actually, that's something else too. We will see, we'll probably hear about our Biden administration and Wall Street people literally throwing up over what's going to be happening to the dollar over these next weeks and months. That will be a sort of an initial theme and a continuing theme going on. If we're lucky, it won't be replaced by banker suicides. Okay, because that was the meme of the 1930s, was the Wall Streeters, the stockbrokers, and the bankers all just stepping off of very high buildings because they'd lost everything basically overnight, blah, 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 as the currency went through its first real collapse in, at that time because it was a transition from gold standard before the clowns from Jekyll Island, and then paper standard thereafter. It was redeemable, but it wasn't. The stock market had a big influx of currency. It took a big explosion upwards. They didn't know how to manage it, and so on and so on. And so they were poor managers of their own dollar empire at that stage, or their own dollar, and then they built it into the dollar empire. And now they're also poor managers. We've got another crowd of der Unterführers that really don't understand what's going on or where we are at historically. So we're going to see colleges go, we're going to see universities go, all their endowments are just going to be wiped out based on how this stuff's going to lay out. Bribery is going to go away. That's one of the consistent themes in the, well, no, not bribery, I mean, because the bribery will actually increase. But the kind of bribery based on the ability to print dollars will disappear. And so this is going to affect all the people in the deep underground military bunkers where they're dissecting, you know, supposedly alien corpses and you know, cloning Lady Gaga, that kind of stuff, right? But all of the real stuff in the deep military underground bunkers will come out. And we'll see that same effect as we saw in Russia, only larger, because it's such a desperate time at the moment. We're going to have breakdown and takedown, in the sense the takedown is going to be the reasserting. A lot of people are going to just simply reassert their constitutional Bill of Rights kind of thing by force of personal will in a local grassroots kind of a deal, because these people will have something that the operating structure will not, which is they will have wealth, not dollars. So you're going to see a situation where your local fire district, or some, let's just say a local census district in Oklahoma or someplace where they've been prudent and they've actually got silver and gold, and you got enough of the citizens there that they're able to form their own little operating currency, may literally end up taking over the political structure, however they may desire to do so, simply because they will have the ability to back their actions with hard money. And that's a big difference that people won't understand. So I have had a lot of detractors and abusers that say, oh, you're full of it, it doesn't work that way, and so on. I suspect that a lot of these individuals are younger than, say, 40, and they have never lived in a hard money world where you could actually touch silver and or gold, as I did in my youth. We had circulating silver and gold coins. Not gold, but circulating silver. And then we went to other countries where they did have circulating gold coins. Anyway, so that changes everything. Once you've got hard money, it changes everything. And so you'll see a radical reappraisal of things. And so it comes down to this. There's a classic tale in the collapse of the dollar in the 1930s and the collapse of the stock market and so on. And this was at the point of the 1932. It was before they seized gold, but not that long before. And what had happened was the stock market had crashed, the bond market finally crashed, and everybody was in a real world of desperate hurt. And there were tales in newspapers of extraordinary things happening. And so one of the extraordinary things happening was that there was a Rolls Royce, some ultra Rolls Royce that was brand new in 1929 that had sold, or it was, maybe it was 1930, it was 1930 car, and the guy had paid like $25,000 in 1930, imagine, right? It'd be like a $500,000 car right now. Super luxury mobile. And there's a picture, if we can ever find it again, that shows the guy who sold it in 1933 for a small stack of silver coins. And that was the entire value he could get out of that vehicle. Not only, this was in New York, and of course you have all of the issues in New York with vehicles even then, you know, storing it, keeping it safe, and so on. But that was the conversion factor. So $25,000 purchase price reduced down to a small sack of silver coins. And at the same time, out here on the West Coast, you have the quintessential story of the bellhop in San Francisco who is given a $20 gold piece by a rich Alaskan miner prior to the Depression, during the heyday of the 1920s. He hangs on to the gold piece throughout all of the 20s, and then in that period of time in the 1930s, actually this was after the gold had been seized and he still had it, he bought the hotel he used to work in for that single $20 tip. because it was in gold. And so that's the difference in this. So if I've got a Tesla, ultra yada 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 Tesla, but I've only got paper dollars, and I can't even pay my electric bill to charge the Tesla with the paper or with the digital currency. Paper dollars is a different issue, and I'll talk about in a second. Then I'll sell the Tesla for some hard money and get me over this hump. So we will dishoard those things that we came by easily because the currency was easy to come by, because it was helicopter money, because it was given to us, and so on. So we're going to have this weird wooflation where there will be deflation on goods, there will be hyperinflation on currency numerics, and there will be inflation on actual costs of things we need to sustain ourselves, food and water and so on. That will inflate because of the hyperinflation on all this other stuff. This inflation will be a realistic inflation as we all hunt for the real value of things, because we've been living in a delusionary, we've been living in an illusion that's been sold to us by these clowns that could print money. And so we don't know what the true value of things are. And so we're going to come to realize that. Hard money makes for hard politics. So expect the politics to totally change, because if you can't pay for any damn thing, you're not going to, and you can't tax it out of people that don't have it, and so you're not going to get the road repair money for you to rip off to give to your cousin, right? So it's going to crack all over the place. And you're going to get all of these, the local politics and corruption is just going to start falling off and being exposed because we can't pay for it anymore, and they can't paper it over as the dollar collapses. And this will extend all the way through the hollow Biden administration. It's going to probably mean an open warfare for their allegiance between the CCP, the Wall Street people, and the other people, the Hollywood elite or whoever the hell it is that funds them at that level. The BLM people have already been discarded. They've been tossed away, and they're not going to get shit out of the Biden administration here. So the next group to go is going to be the students, because the Biden administration cannot reduce the debt load of student debt. They can't, because that's 2/3 of the underpinning of the dollar. If they were to repudiate any of that, it starts the dollar cracking, and internationally our bonds will just go puke out. Once that happens, all of the derivative markets collapse. So are we going to see $600 an ounce silver? Are we going to see $6,000 an ounce silver? Are we going to see people that say, I ain't giving you my silver for any dollars. You got to come up with something that's worth it. Then maybe I'll give you some silver. I think that latter. I don't think the numerics are going to matter much beyond this year woo. Okay, so we're still in year woo, and we're suffering all of these effects, and they're rapidly piling up. And believe me, everything we've gone through since the election, all right, so even earlier than just this year, but everything we've gone through since the election to this point is nothing compared to what we're going to go through as a result of the wooflation that's going to hit the dollar empire. And so wooflation is weird shit. You just see strange things going on all the time. And so wooflation is the hunt. It's not a search. It is a hunt for actual value of shit. Okay? So that's wooflation. What is it worth, right? You're starving and someone's got some elk steaks. You're starving, but you got a shitload of dollars. Well, hey, you'll pay a shitload of dollars for those elk steaks. So this is where we're down to it. And it's not a search, okay? It truly is going to be a hunt, because we're going to be desperate. It is that desperation that fuels the release of all of the woo tech in summer that gets us through this shit in a way that could not have happened in 1930s. All right, plus we're more of us here, we're more sophisticated, we've already got a lot of the woo shit from the reverse engineered space alien crap that they've got that they now admit to. But it's going to get really even bigger as the state collapses. What we call here in the United States, the deep state is essentially the dollar empire. And it's on its way out. So DS equals is equivalent to the dollar empire. And so that dollar empire, the deep state, it's going to go bluey. It's dying now. Some of them realize it. That's why Der Unterführer is out there saying, you know, Bitcoin bad, Bitcoin bad. They're going to say a lot more things like that. Tons of them are going to be temporal markers. You're going to get really pissed at me because I'm going to come on out and do videos about this stuff. But it's necessary, in my opinion, that we spark discussions around this stuff so that we can treat it as adults and discuss what we're going to do. Because here's the problem. We cannot wait for everybody to get to speed on what's occurring. We've got to start making those changes now as the system is breaking up around us in order to remove the wealth out of the system and be able to put it towards more productive uses in the new systems that we're going to develop as the old dollar empire dies. And so everybody outside the United States, hey, you know, you're on your own, guys, and you got to understand that we're going to be going through some deep shit as the deep state, the dollar empire, collapses here. And so you're going to have to get your own currencies together. Hard currencies are going to work. Resource-backed currencies are going to work, even if that resource is the sweat and labor and brains of the population, right? And so this is where it gets real interesting. The level of effects, for me, the only ones I've touched on here are woo-woo effects that are going to amplify the whole process. The deep underground military bases breaking down and getting all of that stuff, the bribery breaking down and all that stuff coming up, and then the colleges going away. Academia are gatekeepers. As the colleges fail, things like, and like the Smithsonian. We're going to bust open the Smithsonian and see what the shit, guys. All of this stuff is going to be happening here. All as a result of that dollar death process, which Der Unterführer announced to us today is underway. And we're going to see everything upended. So for instance, how much silver is in use and is destroyed in the process of making telephones? Will we be able to purchase and afford $10,000 iPhone? Who the fuck knows? Will we even bother making them at that price? I just don't know how it's going to go. We're going to have a massive economic decentralization and dislocation as all manner of states react to the death of the dollar and attempt to become self-sufficient. So we're basically all retreating from the Communist Party of China because the Communist Party of China is part of the dollar empire. It is supported by the dollar empire. That's what I was going to get into, and I just have used too much time, and we'll do it for another day. But they're going to die because of the dollar empire. The CCP has allied themselves since 1972 with the uni party here, the Democrats, the corrupt Democratic and Republican people here in the United States, and have been part of the dollar empire in a serious way since that point. And now they've all merged into it, but it's all collapsing, and so they've got their own issues as a direct result of the collapse of the currency from these people, from the clown crowd. Anyway, so I'll cover all the rest of this later. Tons of stuff's going to happen. Absolutely, massively tons of stuff. So here's the thing. In Wooflation world, you will realize a direct reward for the value that you put in, but you have to understand that solving problems is what's going to drive that reward. The bigger the problems you solve for people, the larger the reward you can extract out of that process. Unlike the dollar empire where they just control everything and milk it. So they're going to go down. We're going to go to a true meritocracy. And so that's why the culture is going to change because we won't be able to afford to care about woke anymore. who gives a shit, right? We're going to be desperate to get things done, to maintain structures, to not go into a downward spiral. Those people that can work it out will work it out and will survive, and a lot of other people may not because they won't work, don't know how to work, refuse to learn how to work, and refuse to adapt because of the nature of their life's experience. And that's karma. So it's going to be ugly, really, really damn ugly. And I'm not, there's just no way to make this in anything other than what we're going to go through. It's going to be hugely ugly. But there will, in that process, be points of redemption from which we can pull ourselves out. And I suspect that the largest ones that we'll see will come between, let's just say, June, when it's sort of the official time, but also let's say September. Between June and September, I suspect that we'll see some fairly large leaks about technology that will form a basis for us being able to reinvigorate reinvigorate our species, humanity, and our economic systems based around these new technologies. Now, I think that will coincide with the ultimate big demand for government for silver, because I think a lot of these technologies will probably require that metal. And that will probably also be the point where we discover that there's only some silver they care about for particular kinds of technology, because it's some kind of a altered isotope or whatever. There's some level of difference, and it's not able to be synthesized or manufactured easily. And so we go off on this other hunt for a different kind of silver. Anyway, though, that's in the reports. They're out there. Thanks for watching, guys. We're here, and Der Unterführer yelling is going to be doing a lot more of that yelling.